selected parts from the book One Life is Not Enough. Part 44. On 2nd August 1990, Saddam Hussein, the president of Iraq, invaded Kuwait, starting what became known as the Gulf War. The move was widely condemned and sanctions were imposed on Iraq almost immediately by the UN Security Council. Allied forces from 34 nations sent their forces into Kuwait to drive out Iraq, managing to do so on 24th February 1991. Even after that, the Security Council did not lift the sanctions against Iraq. In 1996, the Security Council established the Oil for Food program to help the people of Iraq. Under this, the government of Iraq could sell oil under the supervision of the UN and buy food and medical supplies for its people in return. These transactions had to be routed through UN. On 20th March 2003, US forces invaded Iraq looking for weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein was ousted and the $60 billion oil for food program came to an abrupt end. Documents then surfaced revealing discrepancies in the functioning of the program. It was found that surcharges or bribes were being added to the oil price, which were being pocketed by Saddam Hussein. The United States Senate asked for an inquiry into the manner in which the program was being conducted. The Volcker Committee, then called the Independent Inquiry Committee, was set up by the UN Secretary General Kofi Annan some years later to investigate the allegations. It was chaired by Paul Volcker, former chairman of the United States Federal Reserve. The principal allegations which Volcker had to examine were related to the activities of Kofi Annan and his son Kojo. The committee took 18 months to finish the report and submitted it on 22nd October 2005. In its enclosures, the Volcker report listed the names of companies and individuals who had profited from the Oil for Food program. On 26th October 2005, I visited Moscow to hold bilateral talks with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Before the meeting, I was informed that President Putin would himself be present at the afternoon session. I was greatly surprised because heads of state do not participate in discussions between foreign ministers. President Putin arrived on time and sat on the table facing me. His foreign minister was sitting on the right. The meeting lasted over 90 minutes. I kept asking myself why Mr. Putin was bestowing this honor on me. I concluded that it was because Putin had seen me in June when I accompanied Sonia Gandhi on her visit to Russia and must have observed that Sonia and I were very friendly throughout the trip. My last meeting with him was to be on the afternoon of 28th October. The afternoon session concluded at 5 pm, and 2 hours later, I took a flight to Frankfurt where I was to spend the night. The next day, at 5 am, the director of my office came rushing to say that the permanent representative of India at the United Nations, Nirupam Sen, wished to speak to me urgently. I asked Nirupam why he had woken me up so early in the morning. I was astounded when he told me that the Walker report had been presented to the UN Secretary General and it carried my name, that of the Congress Party, and several corporate houses as non contractual beneficiaries. According to the report, the Congress had been in the oil business with Iraq since 1997. At around 6:30 am, I also received an email carrying a front page report from the Hindu which highlighted this fact. At no time did Walker inform the Congress Party or me before including our names. He should have done so. This was truly a bolt from the blue. When I was in New York with Prime Minister Manmohan Singh in late September 2005, I had heard that the Walker report would be submitted to the Secretary General sometime in October. Manmohan Singh had also met Paul Walker in September 2004. I was a bit surprised at why he needed to spend so much time with the man. On my return from New York, I also remember mentioning to Sonia Gandhi that Kofi Annan would lose his job if he was named in the Walker report. After I had spoken to Nirupam Sen, I sat down to reflect on what I had been told. I had two options before me. One, to proceed to New York, meet Paul Walker, and ask him for an explanation. Two, to submit my resignation to the Prime Minister. But my conscience was clear. Why should I resign? I decided to go to Delhi and meet the Prime Minister and the Congress President. I had a very restless day. I sent a telegram to the PM telling him that I would explain my position as soon as I reached Delhi. Before I left, I was shown the statement of the Congress General Secretary Ambika Soni, in which she said, clearly referring to me, that as far as individuals were concerned, they were competent to defend themselves. I was outraged. I had spent my whole life in the foreign service and in politics, and I knew that such a statement could not have been issued without the approval of Congress President. My relations with the Gandhi Nehru family had begun in July 1944. At least I should have been given the benefit of doubt by the party chief. I landed at Palam Airport at 10:30 pm and noticed a group of media persons waiting for me. I ignored them and arrived home at about 11:30 pm. To my amazement, I saw that my house had been surrounded by more than a dozen TV vans and a large number of photographers and reporters. With some difficulty, I managed to get into the house. Next morning, I discovered that the Prime Minister was out of town. I did not contact Sonia because I was still very upset by the official statement of the party, and I had expected her to send for me, bearing in mind that she was aware of what was going on and why. In the next few days, life became intolerable. The media had already decided that I was guilty. This line had been fed to them by a group of senior cabinet ministers. The message from our permanent mission to the UN categorically stated that the names of several important personalities had been mentioned in the report as having benefited from the Oil for Food program, including heads of state and prominent politicians. The complete list provided to the Volcker Committee by the Global Policy Forum had two names from India: Bhim Singh of the Panther Party of Kashmir and the Congress Party. A discussion on the report was held by the Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations of the US House of Representatives on 9th February 2005. The list of 270 beneficiaries at the time did not include my name. At the meeting, as is documented, a Dr. Nirmod Rafeli of MEMRI presented the list. But in a list presented at a meeting on 9th March, my name was inserted. All the countries named other than India rejected the report. The matter came up in the Indian Parliament after my return. I made a statement in the Rajya Sabha explaining my position. In both the houses of Parliament, the government categorically stated that I had committed no financial impropriety and that Volcker had not contacted the Indian mission in New York or me or the government of India. I was greatly relieved, but not for long. Within a day or two, a tsunami hit me. Anil Mathrani, a junior functionary of the Congress and the Indian ambassador to Croatia, gave an interview to India Today saying that the Congress party and I had asked for vouchers for oil barrels to be allocated to me during a visit to Iraq in 2001. Mathrani had worked under me in the Foreign Affairs Department of All India Congress Committee. In his interview, he said, of course, he, that is Natwar Singh, knew all these things from the beginning but preferred to keep quiet. That Natwar and the Congress never knew is hogwash. In January 2001, the Congress party had sent a fraternal delegation to Baghdad on the invitation of the Deputy Prime Minister of Iraq, Tariq Aziz, whom I had known for a number of years. The delegation was led by me. Its other members were A.R. Antule, former Chief Minister of Maharashtra, P. Shivshankar, Cabinet Minister Shri Eduardo Valerio, and Anil Mathrani, then Secretary of the Congress Foreign Affairs Department. I had carried a letter from the Congress President for President Saddam Hussein, which I delivered to Tariq Aziz. Before leaving for Iraq, I had a long and detailed discussion with Sonia Gandhi on my itinerary there and the likely agenda with the Iraqi government. My son, Jagat Singh, who was a General Secretary of the Youth Congress, had accompanied me on the trip because I needed assistance after my bypass surgery. As a Youth Congress member, he had also been officially invited to Iraq by Non-Aligned Students Youth Organization member Subodh Khan Sahai to attend the NASYO conference. He went to Iraq a second time as well for this purpose. Sahai too, I think, was with us on this flight. Andalip Sehgal, a friend of Jagat's and a businessman with Iraqi links, happened to be in Baghdad during our delegation's stay. He was also apparently friendly with Robert Vadra. He regularly visits Baghdad. The Mathrani interview was taken up by the opposition in parliament, a growing number of Congress ministers, and the media. Over a period of 2 to 3 days, the atmosphere became very hostile. People who used to hang around me, asking me to put in a favorable word on their behalf to Sonia Gandhi, suddenly viciously turned against me. The most outlandish stories about me were planted in the media. For weeks, I was on the front pages of newspapers throughout the country and pilloried on television. It was all too obvious that the campaign had been well orchestrated against me by the powers that be. Nowhere was it mentioned that the Volcker report had named the Congress party as one of the non contractual beneficiaries too. However, there were people all over the country who wrote and spoke in my favor. Former Prime Minister Chandrasekhar was among them. At a press conference, leader of opposition L.K. Advani asked whether I was being made a scapegoat because the Congress wanted to put a lid on its own involvement. My temperament is such that I do not get into a flap, neither do I panic. Regardless of the relentless slander, I did not wilt. I got to know that on 28th January 2004, 3 years after my Iraq visit, the Indian ambassador to Baghdad had written a letter to the Foreign Secretary Sham Saran saying that he had seen two articles, one on the website of the Pakistan daily Jang and the other in the Iraqi Arab daily Al Nadia, which had mentioned that Saddam Hussein had given away oil to foreign individuals and institutions in return for political favors. In the list of recipients, the Congress Party and Bhim Singh's names had been mentioned. Both were alleged to have received 1 million barrels each sometime after June 1997. This letter was seen by the Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs and the NDA Foreign Minister Yashwant Sinha, but no action had been taken on it. I had a long meeting with Manmohan Singh on 8th November. It was not a pleasant meeting, and I was so agitated that I spoke in a tone which he must have found offensive. It had been decided by the Congress President and the Prime Minister that I should, in view of this controversy, give up the External Affairs portfolio and take up the post of Minister without portfolio. A team of accomplished intriguers holding high posts in government and the party had decided to target me. Nothing happens in the Congress without the knowledge and the nod of Sonia Gandhi. This is power without responsibility and backseat driving with impunity. I soon found myself completely isolated, and the trial by the media put more pressure on me and my family. On 6th December, I resigned from the cabinet. On 7th November 2005, Virendra Dayal, former Under Secretary General of the UN, was appointed by the Indian government as Special Envoy to liaise with the Volcker Committee. He left for New York on 17 November, accompanied by the Enforcement Director, to collect all the relevant documents from the UN regarding the involvement of the Indians named in the report. On 24th November, they all came back with thousands of documents which he submitted to the Enforcement Directorate. The government constituted the Justice R.S. Pathak Inquiry Committee under the Commission of Inquiry Act to look into the allegations on 11th November 2005. However, after looking at the way in which it was constituted, it became apparent that the proceedings were likely to be one-sided. I had known Justice Pathak for a long time. I also knew his father, J.S. Pathak, when I was serving in Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's secretariat. Soon after his retirement in 1987, J.S. Pathak had approached me to support his candidature as a judge of the International Court of Justice at The Hague. I was then Minister of State for External Affairs. The Ministry of External Affairs had worked very hard to get him selected. He had been extremely friendly whenever I had met him thereafter. I submitted my affidavit to the committee in a sealed envelope on 24th March 2006. Yet, portions from it were quoted in newspapers in early April. I wrote to Justice Patak about the leak but did not receive any reply. On 31st May 2006, I was asked to present myself before the Patak Inquiry Committee. Apart from Justice Patak, there were senior legal consultants present to assist me, each one handpicked by the concerned ministries. Within 5 minutes, it became clear that the committee was extremely biased. They had been instructed to absolve the Congress of all the charges. Justice Patak formally handed his report to the Prime Minister on 7th August 2006. In his conclusions, he totally exonerated the Congress party. About me, he said, there is no material to show that Natwar Singh derived any financial or other personal benefits from the contracts. Regardless of this, my son and I were charge sheeted by the ED of the Finance Ministry. Justice Patak once confided in me that he had been under extreme pressure. He also told me that he had not been able to find any evidence of financial misdeeds by me. In February 2006, I met P. Chidambaram, the then Finance Minister, at my friend and Rajya Sabha member Shobhana Bhartiya's house. She is the daughter of the late K.K. Birla. Chidambaram asked me if I had any objections to visiting the office of the ED, as the government wished to close the case in 2 weeks. I agreed. He assured me that no publicity would be given to my visit to ED. I had 2 meetings with the ED. The news of both meetings appeared in the media the very next day. I telephoned the Finance Minister, Mr. Chidambaram, about my ED meeting appearing in the media. His answer was, Natwar, we are democracy. My son was also called twice, although his name did not even appear in the Walker report. His passport was impounded and he was charge sheeted. I got to know that the documents obtained by Virendra Dayal were never shown to the Patak committee. When I asked Justice Patak about the whereabouts of the Virendra Dayal documents, his reply was, what can I say? That is a long story. Till this day, their contents are a mystery. We had approached the Delhi High Court asking to be shown the documents, but our appeal was turned down on the grounds that the court did not have any jurisdiction over the ED. In 2006, a Bangalore-based lawyer, Arun Kumar Agrawal, filed an RTI application asking for the documents to be presented before the Central Information Commission (CIC). Then, Chief Information Commissioner Wajahat Habibullah upheld Agrawal's petition and asked for the documents to be produced. At first, various ministries in the government kept passing the buck to each other, claiming that the file had been transferred. After much reluctance, it was revealed that the file lay with the ED. The ED, in return, filed pleas with the High Court and the Supreme Court seeking exemption from producing the documents, which were turned down. Finally, in May 2013, the CIC turned down Agrawal's appeal, saying that the disclosure of the documents may adversely affect the friendly relations of India with the foreign countries under reference. Why was the UPA government reluctant to reveal the contents of these documents? The conclusion is obvious. There are uncomfortable truths in them that they are trying to hide. Some of the activities of the ED and other intelligence agencies were also farcical. A team was sent to Jaipur to prove that I owned a house in Beni Park. The team located a house on the gate of which was written Natwar Singh. They rang the bell. A servant came out. He was asked, "Where is Natwar Singh?" "He has gone for a walk and should be back soon," the servant replied. At the moment, Natwar Singh's son appeared. He did not resemble Jagat Singh, my son, who was an MLA from Lakshmangarh and was well known. He asked the team what they were looking for and who they were. He was told that they were from Delhi and wanted to meet Natwar Singh. "What is his profession?" the team asked. The son said that his father had worked in a tea estate in Assam for 30 years. His full name was Natwar Singh Shekhawat. He did not use his surname. I later mentioned this to Bhairon Singh Shekhawat, who was very amused. The team was subsequently sent to London, Geneva, Cyprus, Amman, Baghdad, and New York. They looked for a numbered account in Geneva. Did not exist. In London, they looked in vain for a property I was supposed to own. No such property existed. Since I had known several officers in the department, they told me in the strictest confidence that I had committed no impropriety nor had I any property or bank accounts in foreign countries. They were decent enough to say that they were helpless. I received a number of strange visitors, including a lecturer from Delhi University, a farmer from Bhiwandi, a Supreme Court lawyer, and a sadhu and a sadhvi, all under various pretexts. They did not come on their own. They were sent by intelligence agencies. It was bizarre. My family's telephones were tapped and our mail tampered with. Contrary to accepted practice, our bank accounts were examined and our house was bugged. At a largely attended meeting in Jaipur on 26 February 2008, on the occasion of the centenary of Maharaja Suraj Mal, I resigned from the Congress Party and the Rajya Sabha. The appointment of Paul Volcker as the head of the inquiry committee raised several questions. The inquiry should have been headed by a neutral party, and Volcker definitely was not one. There was a conflict of interests as he was friendly with Kofi Annan. He was also a director of the United Nations Association of the US and associated with several UN committees. It is hard to see how a team of investigators handpicked by the UN Secretary General, who, along with his son, was himself being investigated, can be considered as independent. Volcker confessed to a report from Los Angeles Times that his report had the potential to expose the UN and remove Annan from his post, but when it came to the moment, he said, "I felt uncomfortable." According to the report, hours before the publication of the Volcker report, the Secretary General and his lawyer asked Volcker to change the language about the business dealings of Kojo Annan. When asked whether he knew about the UN Secretary General's son using the connections of his father to profit by the Oil for Food program, Volcker said, "To this day, I still don't know." The ED has still not concluded my case, which has been hanging for almost 7 years. The ED has only given one hearing to my lawyer in all these years. There are still some apparently cooked up income tax cases against me. The media crucifixion continued till 2010, but there are many who believe in my innocence. Arun K. Agrawal in Reliance, The Real Network, says the inclusion of the Congress in the Volcker report was deliberately exploited to create panic by the power brokers and fund collectors of the Congress party itself. to justify a devious conspiracy to hang Natwar Singh in the main square. He also says clearly that I was set up as the fall guy. The Asian Age in 2005 reported that a US think tank stated that my ouster signals India's intent to make relations with the United States as warm as naan bread straight out of a tandoori oven, and that is conspicuously parallel with US interests. Politics is a blood sport where there are no friends at the top. The harassment and the character assassination ceased only a year ago. I was isolated and slandered. It was a trying time, not just for me, but for my family too. But we all have strong nerves and a sense of honor. Being gritty, we survived. Thank you for listening. In his interview, he said, of course, he, that is Natwar Singh, knew all these things from the beginning but preferred to keep quiet. That Natwar and the Congress never knew is hogwash. HOGWASH, hogwash means nonsense. For weeks, I was on the front pages of newspapers throughout the country and pilloried on television. PILLO or pillory means criticize publicly. My temperament is such that I do not get into a flap, neither do I panic. Flap means agitated. Regardless of the relentless slander, I did not wilt. Wilt means to become weaker or tired. Within 5 minutes, it became clear that the committee was extremely biased. They had been instructed to absolve the Congress party of all charges. Absolve, ABSOLV, absolve means declare someone free from guilt. My son was also called twice, although his name did not even appear in the Volcker report. His passport was impounded and he was charge sheeted. Impound, IMPOUND. Impound means seize and take legal custody of documents, etc. And it is conspicuously parallel to US interests. Conspicuous means clearly visible. Thank you for listening.